And welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man perhaps best known for his role as a test pilot for Sayonara Fleet Systems,
Tim Longo.
I know you know what that is.
Is that a Star Wars reference?
It is.
Yeah.
Who are Sayonara Fleet Systems? What do they make?
They're the TIE fighters?
Yes, they are the TIE fighter manufacturer. Very well done.
I had to say it in the form of a question because I wasn't completely sure.
And I had to find a YouTube video to tell me how to pronounce it. Because
I did not have to look it up. But
of course you didn't.
And the X-Wing is on the tip of my tongue. Let's come back to it.
Okay. You think about that for a while.
Yeah.
In the meantime, let's get more Earthbound and return to XCOM. We're doing a bonus episode here. We have spent an awful lot of time on XCOM UFO Defense, which is the original by Julian and Nick Gollop and their team some 25 years ago. But we are taking a little look tonight at the modern incarnation by Firaxis Games, which came out just a few years ago, and I probably should have looked that up beforehand. But
I think it was 2014, maybe.
That sounds about right.
I did look it up, and I've forgotten.
Which is known as XCOM Enemy Unknown.
Yeah,
it came out. Oh my goodness, in 2012.
Oh wow!
Further back than I would have realized. In fact, as we record this, we are one day past the 5-year anniversary of XCOM Enemy Unknown.
Yeah, Gamma Sutra reran. I don't know if you saw that. They reran the postmortem on that.
I haven't
game
caught up to that yet.
For the 5-year anniversary.
That is cool. They do that sort of thing.
And I almost sent you, as a quick aside, and then I'll move on. There was a cool article on this YouTuber who... Anyway, it's Silent Hill 2 related, so I'll send that to you later. We can talk about it when we get to that.
That's good, yeah.
Interesting kind of, nostalgia. But, yeah, they put that postmortem up for Firaxis' game, heralded game at the time, and also, the expansion / sort of, collected Game of the Year kind of edition of XCOM 2 just came out, and it also, at least the collected version got really good reviews. So Firaxis' follow-up, ultimately they're still going strong with this modern version. So it's and Mario, of course, right? So it's still on everyone's tip of their tongue.
Absolutely. It's very much in the focus. And I'm going to go right out here on a limb from the beginning. I prefer the original.
Yeah, I think I do too. I debate that a lot in my head. How many times have I said so far?
At least 6.
Oh, geez. That was intentional. Yeah, I had the same note and big conundrum in my head on this topic.
Okay, so I'm curious for you as to why. I know why I prefer the original. And I'm going to go ahead and full disclosure, I've only played a little bit past the tutorial. I'm not deep into this game, so there may be a certain bias just of I've played 20 times as much of the original at this point. So there's possibly just a plain investment bias. But go ahead. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, so yeah, I played farther, but not too much farther than you have in the modern one. And I think I had the same caveat because I'm still playing the original, even though we finished the podcast series and much deeper than I was before. Like I'm really having a blast with it. And so definitely biased for me because I feel like I've kind of hit a stride, so to speak, in the original, and I know that's probably going to come crashing down soon for me as I have all this confidence and then something big's going to happen. But I'm pretty decked out, and I'm really kind of raring to go against the aliens. So I feel very confident. And so switching over to this modern one was definitely kind of a shell shock. The note that I wrote down kind of comes down to, I guess, what we talked a lot about in the original series is really just kind of the mystery and the discovery of the game. Because the modern one, admittedly, it is more usable, quote unquote, from a usability perspective in pretty much every way, from my perspective. But because of that, right, it takes a lot of the, I don't know, we talked about the exploration of the systems and the discovery of how combinations work and uncovering of things. And as any modern game would, they're gonna try to make it more, they're gonna hold your hand a little bit, and they're going to dole things out to you in a more rational manner. And because of that, they're taking away some of that discovery
that
and
magic.
even
right. I made a similar note about the beginning of this game, where we talked in the first episode of this series about how they throw you in and they give you the manual and it's a flowchart because certain things may not happen because it's a deep simulation. And here they constrain that all the way down to the point of the first mission is literally do everything this voice commander tells you to do. Move this person to here, here's an arrow, do exactly this, move this person here, etc. And they're introducing all these systems. And that's fine. I actually think that's a good addition in the sense of knowing what the heck's going on. And certainly if you haven't played one of these before, it would be difficult to understand everything that's going on. For me, actually, the biggest thing that's driving me crazy is there is so much camera switching going on all the time that it's too much. It reminds me.
Interesting.
So in the tactical game, and I
get it.
I agree with you on the other stuff with the discovery, and they're sort of holding your hand a lot more about what's coming. Oh, and if we do this, we'll be able to do this thing. In the tactical moment to moment play, I can't stand that every time I shoot, I switch to a camera, which is over the guy's shoulder, and oh my gosh, is he going to hit it? And oh, he hit it, and now we show an animation. Oh, the enemy's down. Oh, and he's got green blood everywhere, etc. It goes on and on and on, and all the drama is lost from the original series in the sense of these projectiles that take forever to get there. Some of which makes sense because these are more instant fire, etc., whatever. But so a lot of the drama is lost because the effects of the guns happen immediately, and because the camera's swinging wildly about, I quickly lose where I am, and then I come back to that out. So that it's really hard to contextualize those views for me.
Yeah,
just from a pure.
Yeah, that's fair.
Standpoint, I guess, as a film guy, right? There's 180 rule breakage constantly. It's very, very hard to parse immediately. And what it reminds me of is, so we played Final Fantasy IX, and you remember
which is being re-released, by the way. Did you see that? I mentioned that too. They're putting it on PS4.
No, I did not. I did not see that. So, I'll probably play 12 again before I play 9 again because I've played 9 twice already. Oh, so in Final Fantasy 9, you remember you summon things and they have these big effects and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Big spell effects. In Final Fantasy 8, that would happen every time you summoned a thing.
Oh, I remember you mentioning that, yeah.
And that's what this game feels like to me. Every time I take a shot, it's, oh, I got to pull over here and frame it nicely, and blam, oh, it hit, it didn't hit, etc. And
I wonder if you can turn that off.
It's possibly true, but
look around. I actually like it. It's funny.
Yes, it drives me crazy.
Yeah. I wrote a note down, actually. I was like, these dynamic cameras work pretty well. Pretty cool. I don't know. We have many differences, but some consistent themes I think come up on the cast. And I like sort of like over-indexing on immersion sometimes, where, I love that immersion of it. I think because it makes me feel like I'm playing a squad game or something.
That's the thing, though, is that doesn't feel immersive to me because it changes my point of view so much. In a film, if it did a lot of that, I have a hard time following the action, and I don't even know. Maybe that's
I understand. No, I understand the concept of what you're saying for sure.
I find myself lost, and then okay, now I'm back to this view, and it's. I might as well just close my eyes while it resolves. Is
Well,
what
I
feel
wonder-
like. And it's
I
possible
wonder
you
if-
can turn that stuff off, and that's great. But as an initial presentation thing,
Yeah.
my reaction was, ugh. Ugh.
Yeah. I wonder if you'll get used, because I think the big caveat for both of us is that we haven't played, like for me, some of the complexity and mystery may come. You know,
Right.
one of my kind of worries about it may come down the road, and I assume it does because I have friends that have played this game like 5 times, on every difficulty, and they're classic XCOM fans from the classic game as well. So there must be something in there. And I'm also, full disclosure, I did start on easy with this one, mainly because of my training from the main one, which
sure.
I kind of intellectually knew I didn't need to do for this one because they probably had better difficulty,
Right, I started with normal out of the gate, but I mean, I didn't expect to play 30 hours of this, so
yeah,
I may not.
I'm going to keep playing that.
I may not play more of it, to be honest.
Interesting.
I find it very attractive and nice, but I also fundamentally didn't feel like it was advancing much, except maybe the crunching down a lot of the base management and geoscape stuff to be much more manageable, which is attractive.
Yeah, I think that's pretty neat. I like the base stuff. I like the boiling down of that stuff. It was really weird, and I bet you there are probably, 0.2%. I don't know. That's probably too extreme, but there's a very small percentage of people who played the original, right before they started this one, we're doing, and so the comparison is like 1 for 1. So this is a very unique case, but they've taken so much of the management away and kind of, put it into some very simple systems. And like you said, onboarding is very simple, and there's just a lot of the guesswork is taken out of it, even in some of the ground combat. And so that's very appealing for a modern game. But I guess because I've just literally that day, I was playing it yesterday, I had just played multiple hours of the original, and then I went to this. So I actually have gotten to this point with the original where all of that like micromanagement stuff has become kind of part of it for me, and this takes that all the way, and it kind of spoon feeds you more stuff, which you want to do. If I were making this game, I would probably make the same decisions from a modern era perspective to try to make. I mean, this game is on the iPad, right? Like this one,
that's true, sure.
Specifically is on the iPad, and I was kind of contemplating whether I should play it there or not, but I wanted higher res. But so that the other note I put down in this area is that I feel like the original, for me now, because I've gotten a little better at it, feels more like I'm playing chess or something. Like there's this very methodical, like systemic way that I'm playing it, and I know each of the buttons I'm pressing.
You're deploying formations that you've come up with on your own.
Yeah, I have patterns that I've created,
and it's not going to react to that. One of the things that reduces that complexity immediately in the new version, and actually I think this is a good choice, just from a time management standpoint, is drawing down the squad to 4.
Yeah, that was really. I would have made the same choice too. I feel like
I think it's a pretty good decision. I would almost rather have 4 teams of 3 or something like that. I like the idea of having lots of people and being able to micromanage if I want, but I get it. I probably would do a similar decision, but that does end up constraining the map, the number of enemies you're going to face, etc.
It's just, I mean, the original is overwhelming for sure.
It is,
and you can see why a lot of people would drop off of it. The other category of notes that I wrote down that I wasn't actually expecting for this, that's related to sort of your squad number, is because they have created a more, onboarding friendly, usable game. It's allowed them room to actually make their designs more complex in some areas and add depth where there wasn't before. Example being, there are now classes that your squad will. I don't know if you've had any rank up.
I have, yes.
Once they rank up to
I have a couple of corporals, Tim Longo and Tim Longo.
Great. Well, there's then 100% chance that Tim Longo will die in your game.
Oh, so one has
very
R.I.P.
clever.
Tim Longo, the rookie.
Well, I'll tell you my Metal Gear Solid stories in a second, but so what that allows them to do then is, so now they have classes. So when you get to a certain rank, the game will assign a certain subclass to your character, and so that allows them to have abilities. So now you have this little ability tree that you're picking as they level up. If they were in which I think is weird that the game assigns you what class you're gonna, for each guy rather than you actually choosing yourself.
I kind of like that, I have to say. I mean, one of the things I picked up from some DM guidance kind of book at some point was, or maybe it was a Dragon Magazine article, something like that, was if the player does something unusual with an object in the game, turn it into a thing. Make it a magical that, oh, this is my flint that always catches fire, right? or whatever, because they happen to roll a 20 to strike a fire in a hurricane. whatever it is, right? And so take the sort of natural things that happen systemically that are exceptions and kind of on the high end or the low end of the scale and turn them into a thing. And I feel like that's what it's trying to do is...
You mean it's basing it on something that happened?
Right. This person made a long shot.
Maybe it is. I just thought it was random when they level up.
I mean, it certainly may be, but my...
That was how
I read it from the very first guy who survived was somebody who threw a grenade or something like that. Or
I give him credit then if that's the case. Yeah. But anyway,
that's how I read it. It could be totally smoke and mirrors. I may have made that association and it's not there. But if it is there, it's great. If it's not there, well,
Yeah, it's just a little odd, I guess. I like that they have taken, they've taken some steps to add a little bit of depth and complexity that I think will be fun to deal with in late game because, there's a couple different trees for each of the classes, so you kind of have to pick your emphasis, for your squad members. So it just adds, there's fewer squad members, but adds more depth within each of them, which is, I think, for me at least, an interesting addition where I don't have to necessarily manage 26 of them,
Right.
Although you over macro wise in the base you do, but like you're not managing 14 on the field. You're really worrying about which one is placed where because of their specialty.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right, sure.
Which it isn't as much because in my original game, most of my squad, with a couple exceptions, are all outfitted pretty much very similarly because I just canvas and I just, surround everybody. So I've kind of got a system down. And it's nice to have to, I want to put my sniper here and I want my assault to go up here, and this is my support, etc. So that's kind of refreshing.
It is. No, I do like the addition of the classes because it makes for interesting tactical decisions. Now, one of the things that happened to me in the second or third mission or whatever was there was a bus and it was over to this side of the map, the I guess you'd say southeast side of the map. So I put my sniper up on top of it. Unfortunately, almost every enemy was way up in the northwest and way out of range of my sniper. So there was this great, here's an opportunity. Put your sniper here. It felt like the game was directing me to do this thing. And because I'm still basically in the tutorial, but I got no payoff for it. So I had a lot of wasted moves, effectively, for doing that. So it's one of those things that's really strange. I mean, I thought of Republic Commando in a way. The loadout is simplified, but it also, because of these classes, it's guiding you as to what the characters are good at, which I like. Because, of course, that's a thing that we just hinted at and actually didn't code in Republic Commando. We sort of suggested that they had these specializations.
Yeah, we wanted to do more, eventually, and might have in the future, but never did, yeah.
So, yeah, tactically, I feel like there are options, and it tries to make use of those options. I wish they paid off a little better in the early game. But you had an observation about the tactical game that you
the other system that I like a lot is the way they boiled down the time unit conundrum, because in the original, it was percentage based, and Even though when they leveled up, they got more time units, it didn't really seem to do that much because
it helped. It helped a lot with movement, but not with firing.
Right, with firing, yeah. And so in this one, I'm sure they do similar leveling up situations, but they boil it down. Basically, you have 2 moves or a dash that takes up 2 moves, and everybody can do 2 moves. Or you have or you have your actions, which is like fire. You have basically your action bar, and you can use one of those, which is fire, overwatch, hunker down, things like that, heal. And it's really just kind of that simple. You're just picking between those things. And I really like the dash because you can make that really simple calculated choice of, do I just want him to get farther and eat up both of those, or do I want to do one move and then go into Overwatch? Or
you move a little faster, so you are less exposed to enemies who are overwatching. It
felt nice and intuitive and simple.
And they do clarify that Overwatch to be a specific action, which was the reacting to
opportunity fire.
That opportunity fire that we had a hard time.
Yeah,
fully grokking. It took us a long time to get to the point where we were like, oh, okay, I feel like I have a handle on this now. This is very explicit. It's one of the choices that you can make. And although sometimes I'm a little unclear about why I can't do it.
Yeah, the rules. I will say line of sight.
I think it has to do with specialized weaponry or something like that. But like the rocket launcher guy has to overwatch at the beginning of his turn, or you can't overwatch. Something like that.
Yeah, there's definitely some weirdness in there I haven't figured out. But but yeah, it's you don't need to reserve time units to have that occur. You just choose to use it as an action, which I think is a really nice, elegant solution for that.
Right. And they took out lots of things like turning. Everybody kneels behind cover automatically. There's a lot of little fiddly choices that you'd make in the original.
Quality of life kind of stuff, yeah.
Sure.
I do... Oh, go ahead.
The thing is that in the original game, those lead to those moments of, oh man, whoops, of not planning far enough ahead. Of, oh man, I wanted to be able to kneel here, but I took one step too far.
Yeah.
So I don't have the 4 extra. So either I'm exposed or I can't opportunity fire. You make those. You sort of react. You have that jazz moment, and I think that some of that jazz is taken out here as a necessity of streamlining it.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting, for me, an unexpected and interesting lesson in how far do you streamline, especially, damn it, I said it again, especially when you are making a spiritual, successor to something like this. You take a core concept that was really successful back in the day and had some evolution, but then went dark for so long, and then you're going to make the next one, and you have the modern era to bounce off of, so you want to actually accommodate some of those conveniences that modern gaming has created for us, which is wonderful, but there's also, you have to be careful with how much how far you go, and I'll be completely honest, I didn't anticipate. I figured going into I was really excited, and I still am. Like I said, I'm going to continue playing. I did like what I played. I was going into this thinking, oh man, it's going to be better in every way. It's going to be the perfect version of what I just played hours ago, and I can't wait. And I was really surprised at how much I missed some of the, je ne sais quoi, whatever of the old one.
I think there's something really elegant about the original design in terms of things like the time units of, you have this many things, you quickly learn what everything costs.
It's very discrete.
Very precisely determine what all that is, and have the feel of the streamlining without being so streamlined. Because a lot of the time playing the original, I felt like, okay, I know how far I can advance. I can use these buttons that make it easier for me if I want. So I can effectively have the dash type functionality in terms of planning and making it simpler on myself. But at the same time, I have that fine granularity, and here that fine granularity is lost. Yeah. And a lot of the little player moments of Fiero, that excitement of, oh, I did it. I did exactly the right thing, are also lost because you don't gain anything from only going half of the distance to your maximum first move distance, you don't gain anything from doing that.
It's only tactical if you choose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's tactical benefits, but you don't get any. You can't do a more precise shot as a result, for example. So,
yeah, anyway. the other kind of macro note I wrote down on that topic really is just the hill to climb in the first one is so much steeper, and it's so much more opaque and complicated to figure out what the heck's going on. Mm-hmm. When you get over that hill, like again, I said, I think I'm over, but I'm sure I'm going to be surprised that I'm not. When you get over that, it's so much more gratifying. And my prediction on this one is the difficulty curve and the onboarding and everything is just nice, slow and steady and builds perfectly because of modern game design. But because of that gratification could potentially not be as great. Do you know what I mean? Because you have
the lows were lower and the highs were higher.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's necessary for a wider audience. I mean, that's
it is. We've talked about it multiple times on the podcast. We've both been through that on various projects where you've come up against that conundrum of how far you go with that, and broadening is often an important goal of a game with a fairly big budget, but. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Let's turn to the macro game as far as the base goes a little bit. There are a couple things in there I particularly liked. I do like the streamlining of the world map in the sense of making very explicit what's going on there. Hey, you can put satellites over every territory. When you do that, you gain these bonuses. When you put a plane there on patrol, I guess, I don't know, they kind of abstract a lot of that stuff. You get this bonus, and you can see literally the panic rising, which is a very board game sort of thing in individual territories. The first choice you have to make is North America or China. I assume it was the same for you.
Yeah.
And you chose North America.
I chose China.
Did you?
I did.
Because you wanted the extra.
I'm kind of pissed at North America right now, so I don't
want to throw the Canadians and Mexicans under the bus.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, I chose North America.
Well, it's funny when they say North America. I don't know if you noticed on the map. I think only the United States is the United States.
Canada
highlighted.
Is separate. Yes,
yeah.
That is correct, and that is obnoxious. But anyway, so I chose North America. It's interesting, but it puts the other territory immediately into a bit of panic.
Yeah.
But you can see how bad that panic is, and
choose what to do.
Exactly. You can make decisions down the road, and that I think will lead to sort of squeezes where it becomes difficult to make a decision.
They definitely. Go ahead.
If, for example, you've also put your base in North America and you're focusing your attention on North America, that probably doesn't come up. But at some point, maybe they invade that base, and now there's a huge panic, and you still have this panic to manage in China, and that's going to be a squeeze point of, oh man, I need to make a huge decision now. Do I alienate the Chinese forever and maybe just mark that off the map with its 1 billion, 1.2 billion people? Or do I sacrifice this base in order to preserve the money that brings in or whatever? I mean, it can set up those systemic things and make it very plain that, this is why. You're at the point now where either way you go, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back in that place.
Yeah,
which I really appreciate.
It's very Firaxis in that way, right? You have to make a hard choice between two things, and you can't do. I can see them building
interesting choice.
Multiple.
I think they would say.
Yes, they would, but also.
But yes, a hard one.
There's a good example in Civ I can't think of right now that I had in my head, but just that you can see that they're building up set pieces and kind of a foundation for how all those macro systems work, where to your point, you're going to get to these junction points in your career where it's like, well, I can't do two things wholly do two things, so I have to pick one or the other. I think that's going to come up multiple times, both with your squad members, both with how you build your base, because like power is a new resource in your base. And so once you start building extra,
So it was space.
What's that?
Space. It was in the original game, but here there's a lot more. Oh, I want to put this next to this other thing because I get benefits if I do that.
Yeah, there's a mini game there, but like the power, you can't. You can build more power, but if you have a limited amount, then you're going to have to choose, even regardless of space, how much you can use. And so there's some of that. The other system that in the meta / micro or macro game that I actually really appreciate and think the original could really have benefited from is, well, I tend to be somebody who likes to check things off of lists, and this kind of concept of missions that they have where you're presented with 3 missions at 3 different countries, and like you said, what the status of each of those countries are, so you can pick which country you're going to do the mission in and thus raise or lower their panic. But then there's a different reward for each of those 3 missions. One might be money, one might be scientists, and one might be, I forget the third.
Engineers.
Category. Maybe engineers, yeah. Or no, it was another squad member. You can get a sergeant, heavy sergeant,
Right. And you can basically recruit somebody who's further along.
Yeah. I just thought it was cool to introduce kind of a mission or quest motif in there where you can choose what your reward is going to be based on how you're playing or what you need, but then that choice also has repercussions on the country that you chose.
Right.
And so there's some interesting connections of
right. There's a lot of tumblers that spin when you crank that dial, when you make that choice of, oh, I did this, well, it got me that, but it was at this cost, and I didn't have this opportunity that I would have had if I'd gone with this other one. And it does make those choices really interesting and forces that. I think that for me was one of the stronger parts of this new design was all that. And I keep saying board gamey, but all that stuff felt very board gamey because it's very discrete. You're going to get this, and this number is going to go up or down, etc. And you can see it all laid out in a nice presentation of what that's actually going to mean to you. And although I don't really know what happens when you get to the end, one end or the other of those spectrum or spectra,
of the panic, or you mean?
Of the panic, for example. Yeah. If you totally eliminate the panic, what does that mean? Do they stop giving you money because they're not afraid? I don't know. There are consequences that could happen as a result. So, but I do know that I want to try to thread that needle. It seems more like a DEFCON thing, like we always know that war is imminent, but we're at different levels of panic as far as how that's going to turn out. So I did especially appreciate that. I also didn't mind losing some of the explicit time management as far as how fast things are going. I thought that was fine.
Yeah. They've abstracted some of that to be a lot simpler, and you don't have to worry so much about it.
You don't have to think about what time scale you want a thing to be happening on. And that is, I think, a good cut. I didn't miss it. It did feel a little weird to just go to the planet and go into scanning mode and just kind of sit there and wait.
I feel like for me at least, a lot of that is because we just finished playing the other one.
Yeah, that may be it. Again, there may be a sort of Stockholm Syndrome on the original game. As far as
totally true. Gosh, that game. Yeah, I can't stop playing it though. The original. It's funny how much love and hate I had at the beginning, but I guess I've gotten to this point where I have a rhythm. And I really like, I'm drawn back to play. You're getting
to those points where you're having payoffs and theories that you had are paying off and working, and feel good about
kind of winning. Like I'm winning against them, and I feel like I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna do this. You guys are going down. Like I have this kind of I've just hit a stride or something.
All right, so you named all your people after Metal Gear.
Yeah, my first... Yeah, of course I did. Everybody's named after Metal Gear characters. I have, a squad of heroes and a squad of villains from the franchise. But Big Boss was the first one to go down. And so he's and he was like in one of the tutorial missions, so he's on my memorial wall, as nice. My only casualty so far.
Lost. Nice.
I'm going to stick with it.
I just went and renamed them all Tim Longo.
Yeah, that's not nice.
Every single one of them.
So you have an army of clones of...
I have an army of Tim Longos. I'm not even sure at this point whether it's worth saving this planet.
You serious? That's good. Yeah, just send them all. Just send them all to their doom on a ship, is like into the sun.
Let's go to Mars now.
You guys got this.
I know where they are. He'll be fine. Tim's longos. All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and do a little feedback.
Okay.
Welcome back from the break. It has been a lot of fun visiting XCOM, UFO Defense, and then talking about Enemy Unknown tonight. We are still hoping to have an interviewee. We had a little bit of illness get in the way this past weekend, and we're hoping that we'll be able to reschedule it for next weekend and bring that to you next week. So if not, we'll be turning to Silent Hill 2. And you can watch us on @DevGameClub on Twitter to figure out how far to play, because that is research I will have to do at this point. Because I'm not really sure. We're going to try to make that sort of a short couple of episode game, because it is not super long. Like a lot of Japanese games, you can play it multiple times and try to get different endings and things like that. But fundamentally, to play through it once is not a huge deal. So we will try to get that interviewee on and then turn to Silent Hill 2 afterwards. In the meantime, we have a little bit of feedback, and you can send that to devgameclub@gmail.com. And I gave you the first one, which is short and sweet and a question, as I recall.
Yes, email from Drake Jens. Subject is software engineer interested in transition to game dev. Hello. Just wanted to express my love for the podcast. As a software engineer and avid gamer, I find your show fascinating. The thing that is so cool about games is that we can analyze them on so many different levels. Your technical analysis is particularly interesting to me, of course. I'm currently working in healthcare IT and wanted to ask your opinion on what a good way to start game dev would be, even as a hobby. I've been playing around with Unity. Keep it up.
Drake. Keep it up, Drake Jens. Yes, if that is his real name. So maybe it could be a real name. So I feel like we covered this once before, and I don't want to go into crazy depth and I tried to find in the show notes a something that would indicate which episode we had talked about it, so I could direct you specifically, Drake, to that Q&A. So instead, I'll just say listen to all of them. And one of them will contain, in greater detail.
It's a secret. You have to find find the secret door.
Part of our game design has been to hide these little nuggets of wisdom across 82 episodes, and you just have to dig them out.
There may or may not be an ARG attached to this podcast that
right.
People have not yet found.
You have to go out there.
Night, if you're listening. Speaking of which, before I forget,
okay,
I have to tell this quick story. I won't reveal it yet. Maybe if I get far enough in XCOM, the original XCOM, before or after we talk to our interviewee, I will reveal it. But Reed sent us an encrypted email about his experience with XCOM, which I still have not read because there's a spoiler in it, and he encrypted it to make sure that I did not spoil it for myself, though I think Brett maybe read it. So maybe I'll read that story from Reed, he's been on the podcast before.
He was one of the other test pilots for Sayonara.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, so the briefly, Drake, the things that we recommended were, one, getting out there and finding game jams so that you could meet people in disciplines that don't match yours. As a hobbyist, if you're interested just in the engineering and not in the design aspects, it's perfectly okay to copy old games. Just straight up take an old arcade game that you loved and implement it and figure out. Just finishing one of those is a huge undertaking. A straight up clone is is something that takes a while to take it all the way through. Those were a couple of things that I remember specifically mentioning. Oh, and maybe also getting in touch, if you have one, with your local IGDA chapter, because, again, that will expose you to the people who are not in programming, for example, and can help you with those aspects. It is a really collaborative art, and so it's really, really helpful to have those other other folks to bounce ideas off of. So, other thoughts from you there, Tim?
No, I think if he's fooling around with Unity, I think we talked about, just don't be shy about using middleware. That's definitely a good way to go and to get a kickstart in there. The other good thing about Unity and also Unreal these days is there's good asset stores that they have. So
you don't have to. We talked about,
an artist. You can actually just purchase some folks' stuff that they've made and throw some bones their way. And you can still make that game you've always wanted to make. But especially as a hobbyist, but even beyond that, just get into Unity or Unreal or something and just make something small. That's, I think, one of the other recommendations we mentioned last time is don't go too big too early. Like
make more things rather than bigger things.
Yeah. And there have been some really good stories out there of I'm forgetting. There's a couple people who have done like 100 games, they do like a game a week, or they do 100 games in a year. Or something
that's actually another good thing to do, and this is advice we didn't give last time. You can actually go out and find on, for example, Twitter, professors of game design, and often they're talking about what they're assigning their classes. They may even give a link to their syllabus. I know Brendan Keogh, who is an acquaintance of mine and teaches down in Melbourne, Australia. He has been throwing game design tasks at his class, and he's been doing them alongside them. For example, one of the assignments was find an artist, a classical artist, like a painter, whose style you admire, and make a game that reflects their style. So he made a stupid little arcade game in a week where people are going around this town square and waving at each other. The mechanic was waving because it was all these kind of bucolic scenes in most of this painter's art. And he used the art that looked just like it. So you can find lots of little things like that to sort of focus the design if you're not a design guy, but to give you some sort of interesting ideas to play with. And you'd be surprised what you kind of come up with. But yeah, finding resources like those are pretty straightforward. There's probably been people out there going, hey, professors of design, tell me what you've been doing, and you can find those big long Twitter threads, I'm sure. So lots of ways to find that stuff these days, and good luck. I have the second one. It's from JK. That sounds like two first names to me. But anyway, if that is your real name, if one of those is your real name, XCOM and my favorite horror game. And this is an interesting one to think about because of a topic we want to discuss when we get to the cast on Silent Hill. Anyway, he says, hey guys, love your show. I'm a new listener sent to you by Rebel FM's Anthony Gallegos. Was super excited to hear you guys play the original XCOM. It was one of my most loved and hated games in the 90s. I still go back to it once in a while, but only after some crazy cheat mods. Amen, I hear that when I'm 40 hours in and not sure if I can win. Anyway, he says, basically, I give my players crazy good psionic ability. It's easy pickings from then on. I beat the game fair and square back in the day, kind of a fluke, actually. But nowadays, I just feel like kicking some alien butt, I'll say, in God mode during my lunch break. Regarding horror games, I'd like to express my extreme disappointment at how you failed to mention my favorite horror game of all time, Eternal Darkness. I'm new to your podcast, so forgive me if you've already played this. Hope you guys can explore this game a bit. It's miles better than Silent Hill, if you ask me. Cheers, and keep up the awesome content. Best regards, Justin. So I guess Jay was not his real name. Thank you, Justin. Thoughts?
Well, I mean,
not picking Eternal Darkness is mostly an availability issue. It's not available.
Yeah, I actually used to. I just recently, I think, got rid of my copy. I did have an original copy, Well, maybe I still have it. So, to Justin, I do like it, as we talked about in a Resident Evil podcast, which we did last year. I'm a fairly big-ish Resident Evil fan, but I think I agree with him that when it comes to horror games, it's probably my number one as well. And I am also embarrassed that I didn't think about it. But it is not that available.
It is
Brett's point.
It's not available. Secondly, it's not one or two for me. Silent Hill actually is. Silent Hill 2, I think, may be my favorite horror game, horror video game of all time. And we'll talk about that on the cast, so we'll just kind of set that ahead. I think there's some really interesting mechanical work in Eternal Darkness. Fundamentally, I just don't even want to get into it. It's something we should talk about when we talk about horror games. But I definitely have reasons why Japanese horror games work for me way better than Western ones do. And that's a topic that we wanted to discuss on that cast. But you'll have to wait for that, Justin. But I hear you. It's a good game. No question. But yeah, go ahead.
I'll find it and send it to you before we start. But I think Gamma Sutra, or maybe it was Polygon, had a recent article on the 9 horror games everyone must play kind of article. And there were some that popped up in there that I didn't think of. And they're not all Japanese. So
Alone in the Dark is the obvious one. There may be...
Yeah, it wasn't... I don't think Alone in the Dark was on there.
That might be...
I'm also a big Cthulhu fan. Like, I am a sucker for Cthulhu.
Right.
So that's another reason why I like Eternal Darkness and stuff. But anyway.
Yeah, no, yeah. I appreciate that. It's funny. I think I came to Eternal Darkness at a point in my literary life where I started to find the original Cthulhu writing kind of a little silly.
Sorry. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh man,
like it's so easy to mock.
That's fair. That's fair.
We are very pastichable. Yeah, we should totally talk about all
it's
of this
pulp.
Stuff horror. But yes, it's pulp exactly. And
I just love it because it takes itself.
Yeah, no, sometimes a pulp thing just totally does it for me. And I think I get to a certain point where, and maybe I read too much at once around that time, where I just was like, oh my god, too much Cthulhu.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm crazy for Cthulhu pops. Yeah, let's. But yes, come back and hear us out on Silent Hill 2, and we'll see. Yeah, because man, I don't even know where to begin, because there's some stuff in Japanese games where at the same time I'm like, but this stuff is terrible. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, I'm sure. Anyway, go. I gave you a review. We're going to catch up on a few of those as well.
I have 2 reviews.
Fascinating come back, yeah.
Fascinating podcast by Wayon number 6, I guess. Dev Game Club is a book club style podcast with 2 vet game devs who have made games, and I can pretty much guarantee have made games that we've played before, that you've played before, tackling most classic games so far. The insight into game design, level design, technology, game company politics, all of it is incredibly fascinating. From LucasArts to Fallout, my appreciation of the games I've played has increased after hearing the process of making them. Definitely recommend. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Wii U number 6, if that is your real name.
Madam.
Yeah, we're going to do a few sort of quick ones and not go into a lot of depth, but that's what we're trying to do here. And mostly it's just a chance to talk about these games with Tim and make sure I play some games every week, so that's a good thing too. I have the second one. It's from Quackerjack, KWAKERJAK. So I think this is a duck version of Jack from Jak and Daxter, is how I'm reading this.
Wow, interesting. Interesting.
I may be reading too much into this. Anyway, if that is your real name.
Maybe.
Fascinating insider's perspective, says Quackerjack. As someone with no experience whatsoever with game development, like Tim, I find this podcast incredibly fascinating. While I've always been able to appreciate the artistic achievements of video games to some degree, this podcast enhances that appreciation by shedding light on the technical limitations, commercial pressures game developers have to face when making those decisions. That is true. These are products. That's something we don't talk about too often, but sometimes we do, I guess, with the market pressures. We even talked about it a little bit this episode. These games do not exist in a vacuum. It's funny because I think we were talking about, I mentioned classical painting earlier, and of course those also didn't exist in a vacuum. We just are so far away from when paintings were being painted that we have lost track of the styles and things that people cared about and were buying at the time, or music composition.
Yeah, the context. We have no context for
exactly. I mean, we don't remember that Mozart had to give piano lessons for hours a day, and it cut into his composition time, and he spent all this time trying to find patrons to make him offers to write music so that he could do it for a living. We lose all of that stuff, of the fads and the pressures that were on even individual creators' work. And all that stuff, I think, when it comes to the money part of the business, is even bigger now probably than it has been, at least in big AAA games. So, but yeah, interesting stuff, and we hope you'll keep listening. Why don't you grab the last one, short but sweet?
Gamers Unite by LP Kid 641. Found this gem from a suggestion by Jason from Kotaku, and it's great. Good, thoughtful insight about the mechanics and core concepts of games. Keep up the great work, guys.
And
thank you.
We will try to.
We will.
Yeah, I will. I can't. Well, yeah, who knows about?
I just phoned it in, so
I know, literally.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Oh jeez.
Oh jeez.
Oh jeez. Okay, so I actually wanted to shout out one more thing, and this was a long ago email. Jordan Staley, way back in episode 66, this is something I could search and find, specifically asked us about diving into Nier Automata. We don't talk about the games that we're currently playing just because we fill the cast with lots of other stuff of deep dives into these old games. But I've been playing Nier Automata for the last 4 or 5 days. I am completely addicted. I only got a few hours of sleep last night as a result of being completely addicted. It is delicious. It was a wonderful game. There's a lot I find to really love about it. I hope that I will continue to convince Tim that it is worth his time. It's a wonderful game. Thanks for those who have recommended it to us or to me, both through the podcast and through our Twitter accounts. I am at Brett_Duville, and he is
at Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
Of course, you can find the podcast at Dev Game Club. We'd love to hear your ratings and reviews on iTunes. As you've heard over the last half hour or so, we like to read them online, or on the air rather, and comment. And we appreciate each and every one. If you don't have time to review, please tell a friend and see if you can get another person downloading and listening to our madness. In the meantime, I think that's about all for me tonight. So good night.
Good night. Man, I just can't stop saying it. It's so natural. It just comes out. And you're just over there grinning, I'm sure, ear to ear. Like, oh, he said it again. He said it again. Damn you. Is it Nick? No, who is it?
Dan Guernsey.
Dan.
Dan Hunter from Guernsey. Sorry.
Got it. Right. Anyway,